Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Well, hi, and welcome to What's the Point, another episode. And this one is one that I've been looking forward to since I first had the idea that I was going to do a podcast. This man has had an impact on me and tens of thousands of people throughout North America and beyond. And no better way to introduce him than just frankly reading a defining statement about him. Mark LeBlanc, CSP, runs a speaking business in Minneapolis. He conducts presentations and creates experiences for professionals who want to create an extreme sliver of focus and put more money in their pocket as a business owner. As a business coach, he has clocked over 20,000 one-to-one coaching hours with professionals who want to grow their business or practice. In fact, he wrote the book, Growing Your Business. As a result of his work, people often share they are more focused each day, attract more prospects, stimulate more referrals, and create a path for generating more business. On a personal note, next summer, Mark will go on a short 500-mile walk across Spain, and this will be his fourth time in doing that. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, thank you, Bill. So good to be with you.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate your time and very, very much am looking forward to this. So, as you know, the reason I'm doing this podcast is to help people to clarify and define and live their purpose. And we're kind of going to go down that path, if you'll pardon the pun from our last statement. But something a lot of people take a fair amount of time in their life to find what their calling is, or to find their purpose, or to understand understand what's the point. You, on the other hand, a little bit over 39 years ago, December 3rd was a big day in your life, and I want to say that it was I've got it here. Sorry, I should have. 1982.
That's okay.
Yeah, December 3rd, 1982. Tell us about that experience.
Well, in 1982, I was 21 years old, trying to find my way.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother of one of my best friends said to me, well, what do you want to do with your life? She knew I was struggling to sort of find my way in college. And I said, well, I don't really know, but if it's something that I could do with my voice, maybe be a radio announcer or, on the radio of sorts. But I said the one thing that I did in high school that I enjoyed more than even the sports that I participated in was speech and drama. And so anytime that I was standing in front of a group, I found myself president of every group I was in junior high and high school. And so I was often called to do 5 minutes or sometimes 20 minutes. And I never felt more alive than when I was standing in front of a group. And she said, she goes, my best friend is a nationally renowned speaker. Let's call her.
Okay.
And she called her and set up a meeting, and I was invited to the December 3rd meeting of the Minnesota chapter of the National Speakers Association. And I walked into that meeting, Bill, and it was as if a switch went off in my head and my heart and my gut. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I went home for Christmas a couple of weeks later. Remember, I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my dad, I said, I now know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And he said, what's that? And he said, I'm going to be a professional speaker. And he said, can you make any money doing that? And I said, I don't know, but I met this group called the National Speakers Association, and they're all rich. And little did I know then at 21 what I know today. They were not all rich. But as the story goes, where could a young guy put his toe
Mm-hmm.
into a profession and have the opportunity to have the kind of impact and hopefully influence I've been able to have over now the last 38, soon to be 39 years.
Yeah, that's amazing, and congratulations on that. So what I take from your story, other than fantastic that it turned out that way, is I'm not sure that I would say when you walked into that meeting of the Minnesota NSA that you had necessarily found your purpose, but you certainly tapped into a passion.
Well, a passion for speaking,
Right,
yes, but more a passion for the medium.
right.
Because at that time, I wasn't sure what I was meant to speak on or who I was meant to stand in front of. That would take some time to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's exactly, Mark, the point I want to make, because to me, purpose is a journey. It's not okay, I found my purpose, that's it, it's never changing, now let's work on that and live that. It's something that grows and evolves and changes as we grow and evolve and change. So you had tapped into the passion and you knew you were in the right area and you were in the right arena. You just didn't know what section or what seat you wanted to go to. You didn't know how you were going to take that passion and apply it to something that was gratifying to you and added value to those you would speak with. So yeah, it's a great point, in my opinion, to make to anyone listening, that yeah, we can find our passion, but without purpose it falls flat. And if we have a purpose that we're not excited about, it's going to fall flat. But the other element that I always talk about is persistence. So let me fast forward in your speaking career, NSA related, 25 years after that meeting, approximately 25 years after that meeting, when you had become the president of the National Speakers Association, not Minnesota, not the Midwest, the National Speakers Association. And having found that position because of how well you found out what you were meant to do speaking, you ended up in a position that you probably never dreamed of. So one thing about that I've always that I'd like you just to share with the audience, and I'll get right to it. Tell me about the slide.
Well, the slide, probably one of or considered to be one of the most iconic moments in the history of the National Speakers Association.
I would imagine.
At that time, every president of NSA selected a theme for their year of service, and I had assembled the one thing that I will take credit for was assembling an inner circle or a core team of myself and 3 other people who were my right hands. And we did a lot of brainstorming. We worked on my term of service for 3 years in preparation for this. And the theme that we identified or selected was NSA Rocks. And we went with a rock and roll type theme. We actually had bona fide rock and roll stars on our stage in New York City in August of 2008. However, as is always the case, every president of every organization will come out and say a few remarks to open up a conference or convention. And they walk out on stage and they welcome everyone and thank everyone for being here. And well, we're going to have a great convention experience. And but not me. I gave the shortest speech in the history of the National Speakers Association. I actually slid out on stage in a white shirt and no pants and sunglasses and socks, just like Tom Cruise did in the movie Risky Business.
Right.
And
and let me interrupt you just long enough to say, and boxers.
and boxers. And there was an opening act of some dancers and loud music, and when they finished their set, then the theme song to Risky Business started, and all of a sudden I slid out on stage, full speed, as fast as I could run in my socks, and slid out with my back to nearly 2,100 attendees. And the place went wild, because for most all of my career in NSA, no one had ever seen me without a tie on. Mm-hmm. And in fact, so much so that many people thought it was a stunt double. There's no way Mark LeBlanc would do something like this. So I slid out with my back to the audience, and the place went crazy. And then when it died down, I turned and faced the audience, and the place went erupted again. Yeah. I let it die down, and then I said, "NSA rocks." Now, at that point, the lights were supposed to be cut, and then I was going to trot off stage, but the lights didn't go off. And I'm standing there in my boxers and white shirt and sunglasses, and I'm thinking, cut the lights, cut the lights. And it seemed like 3 minutes. It was probably 30 seconds. Yeah. And finally the lights cut, and I, in the total darkness, exited the stage. And afterwards, the production people said that the crowd was so wild that they wanted to take that moment in. Yeah. And so actually one of my most prized possessions is a photo of the slide. Yeah. And it was the most creative and innovative way that any president had ever kicked off a convention experience. People said to me, that must have taken a lot of courage. And I said, courage? That didn't take any courage. That just took practice. That was the most fun part of my year of service.
I love that story. It's fabulous, and there's so much to take from it, which starts with decide what your point is that you want to make, and then go about deciding with great help, with a great team, deciding how to make that point as powerfully as you can. And at the time, so some people listening to this may not be aware of the movie Risky Business, but at the time, that movie and the Tom Cruise scene was absolutely iconic in any and every age group, genre of our country. And that I can only imagine the crowd and how great that the production company had the wisdom and the not courage but knowledge to let that energy stay and not turn the lights out and throw a wet blanket on it. So what really impressed me when I first heard that story is I heard that story after I had first met you. And you may not remember our first meeting, but I do very vividly for several reasons. But you had come very graciously to speak at the St. Louis NSA chapter. And this is going back 10, 12 years. And it was in a hotel down in the business district here of Clayton. And it's a hotel that I had not been in, and it was just a confusing layout. And I was trying to figure out where the room was for the speaker. And I saw another attendee, who I assumed to be an attendee, kind of looking around and just like me meandering. And I said, "Excuse me, are you going to the talk?" And you said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Do you happen to know where it is?" And you said, "Well, I think it's this way." So you said, "Let's walk together." And we walked to the room, and I'm thinking, what a nice man. And it's also nice to know I'm not the only one lost in this hotel. And the next thing I know, you're being introduced and walking into the front of this group. And so what that made such an impression on me, Mark, because you were so unassuming and just so comfortable in who you were and the message you were going to give. Now, a lot of people, speakers and business people and coaches, kind of come across as literally, "Hey, I'm kind of a big deal." and that's fine. It works for some people. It doesn't work for me. So there's a group I belong to that talks about attraction rather than promotion, and that's what you are. So real quickly, that day you talked about some of the approach you take to business and how you help people in their business. And you talked about something that you call the Achievers Circle. And you happen to have an Achievers Circle scheduled for the following weekend in Tennessee. And when I say that I was attracted to you and your message, I was in Tennessee the following weekend. And I won't go into my story because it doesn't matter. But what I would like to do is ask you to clarify and explain to everyone the concept behind the Achiever Circle, what it does, but also what sparked the idea.
Well, boy, I wasn't prepared for that question and that story. But wow, thank you so much for sharing that. When I started out as a speaker, I really did not know what my topic expertise might be. And even though I found out that I wanted to be a speaker at 21, not a lot of people take 21-year-old speakers that seriously. and and unless you're a young speaker who speaks to youth audiences,
Right.
And many of my friends and colleagues have been of tremendous service and influence in the youth market as a professional speaker. But I knew that I wanted to be a business type speaker.
Okay.
And so I set out, we have something in NSA, a sort of a message or a mantra that suggests you need to earn the right to speak. Well, at 21, I didn't want to earn the right to speak. I just wanted to speak, and I didn't care to who. But I set out on a course. I created a 10-year chapter of being a small business owner. I thought, what better way to earn the right to speak than to become a small business owner and grow a business? And that's exactly what I did. From 1982 to 1992, I built a creative graphics printing and mailing company and built that, and I sold that in 1992 to speak and coach full time. It would take a couple of more years, maybe about 1995 or 1996, when I was speaking on multiple topics, that I had a defining moment about where I would land. And one day I woke up and it literally sounded something like this. I had these 4 or 5 different programs and presentations. And one day I woke up and I thought, if I could do my presentation, Growing Your Business, 50 times a year, I'd be happier than a pig in mud. And I threw away my other presentations and I put all of my muscle and might behind my presentation, Growing Your Business. And to this day, I've delivered well over 1,000 presentations titled Growing Your Business, or some Building Your Practice, Growing Your Business, some derivative of Growing Your Business. And I wrote my first book, Growing Your Business, in late 1999.
And
now,
excuse me, but for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, here's that book. Because I want to talk a little bit more about it when you finish this statement. Sorry to interrupt, but this is something obviously I've hung on to for some time and will continue. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Well, I published that book, and at that time, there were a lot of, at that time, primarily men, gurus, who were putting on what is referred to as a boot camp. A 3 or 4 day business boot camp, and the essence of the boot camp was, we're going to start at 8 in the morning and we're going to work till midnight and for 3 or 4 days, and we're going to throw everything we've got at you, and by the end of that boot camp your head is going to be spinning. And that never really resonated with me. And they were expensive. I mean, they were $10,000. And I thought, I would never spend $10,000 to go to a boot camp like that, even though I had respect for these people who were running them. I mean, they were brilliant.
Yeah.
And I learned from a speaker that I admire. His name is Joel Weldon. And Joel Weldon is a legend in the speaking industry. And something that he's known for is the phrase or the perspective: when everyone is going one way, go the other way.
Okay.
And I began to play with a concept or a question: what would the anti-boot camp
Okay.
look like?
Yeah.
And so I sat down one day, and in approximately 3 hours, I crafted the anti-boot camp experience that was really more of a business retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And it started at 3 o'clock on a Friday and ended at noon on Sunday, and there was plenty of breaks. And we'd have a nice dinner on Saturday night, and I would limit the number of people, and it would be intensive, but it would be somewhat intimate. And I would sort of go behind the curtain and share, my successes and failures
Mm-hmm.
and strategies and business practices. And it became known, and I titled it the Achievers Circle Business Retreat. And Bill, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but um, just 2 weeks ago, or right before Thanksgiving, I delivered number 152. I've delivered over 150 Achiever Circle business retreats to small groups
Mm-hmm.
of independent and practice professionals. But the interesting thing about the Achiever Circle is that I couldn't put a fee on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made the decision. I didn't know if it would work. And there are people to this day who think I'm absolutely crazy. But I came up with, what if people paid just a small deposit to hold their seat, and then at the end of the weekend, he or she would just write a check or put an amount on a credit card for whatever they were able to do and whatever they felt the weekend was worth
Mm-hmm.
at that point in time. And that I would graciously and gratefully accept whatever that contribution might be. And I plunked 3 weekends on the calendar: number 1, number 2, number 3, was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a notion in business that if something is good, it will get better. If something is not good, it will eventually fade and fizzle.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a professional golfer who is, never guaranteed a paycheck in a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
I was 1,000% responsible for delivering
Yep.
and creating an experience of value. And the weekend has just gotten better and better, deconstructed, rebuilt,
Mm-hmm.
gotten better and better along the way. And it has become an expression of my life's work.
Well, for anyone that thought you were crazy when you started that, and I can certainly understand people having that thought. I mean, it makes sense to me that someone would look at you and say, Mark, are you crazy? Or you are crazy, take your choice. But you've just done number 152. So I would suggest that you're not crazy and that the idea would work. And from someone who participated in that, I can tell you that um, again, I'll go back to the phrase I used earlier: attraction rather than promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Your approach there was different. It was definitely an anti-boot camp, and it was definitely something that was much more intimate, involved, nurturing, and beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Now that said, it touched a few chords with a lot of us about some very serious decisions and insights that we had to make.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole concept, Mark, that you came up with, um, I'm going to tie this into one of the principles of one of our mutual, very dear friends, Bob Berg, who, along with John David Mann, wrote the Go Giver and the whole Go Giver series.
Mm-hmm.
But your true worth is measured by how much more you give in value than you take in payment is law one of the go-giver, as all of us go-giver coaches and enthusiasts know. And you let your customer, your client, your coaching client, determine what that value is. Now, what ties that back into a lot of my work in branding through the years is that our value is defined by the person we're trying to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you left it literally up to us and every one of the 152 achiever circles to say, this is what I found the value in, and for you to be sitting here so many years later successfully and continuing on with waiting list for your weekend says a whole lot about create value, give value, and it will work out well. It'll be a financially profitable way as well as a nice way of doing business.
Thank you.
So at the time, this book that I held up a second ago, Growing Your Business, this was and again, you talked about how things have grown and evolved and improved, but at the time you had this Growing Your Business. And one of the key factors about this was to create a defining statement. And tell us a little bit about what was in this book, because I'm going to jump forward, just to forewarn you. I'm going to jump forward and ask you to enlighten us a little bit on how this whole premise from your perspective has evolved and grown.
Well, thank you. And in chapter 2 of that little book, I share a monster story. And the monster story is a story of overcoming a monster or overcoming a problem. And one of the biggest obstacles or problems that people in business or sales face on a daily basis is the inability to communicate effectively what they do and who they do it for or with. And that certainly was a challenge for me. And it was a problem that kept me in the first couple of years when I was full-time trying to find my way as a speaker. I was not clear about what I did and who I did it for. And whenever I went to a networking meeting, I introduced myself differently. And in a moment of great pain, when nothing was happening for me, I had this strategic little planning meeting or conversation with myself. And it sounded something like this. Well, what do you do? And a little voice in the back of my head said, look, stupid, you're not doing anything. Nobody wants to work with you. Nobody wants to book you to speak. Here you wanted to be this speaker, and you're a loser. And but then another question surfaced in this little conversation in my head, and the other question was, well, maybe that's true for the moment. You're trying to find your way, but what do you want to do? And I started to write, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and out of that little brainstorming session with myself and my writing, the answer came, I want to work with people who want to start their own business. That's what I want to do. And I want to work with small business owners who want to grow their business. I thought, that's it. That's the most simple way to say what I do. Now, I thought, how do I say that? And the voice came, look, stupid, nothing else has worked. Why don't you just go say that? And so the next week I went to a networking meeting, professional group. I had been going to this group once a month for about 10 months, repelling people. And this particular morning, I get my minute, I stand up, not a lot of enthusiasm. I mean, I was not in a good place.
Yeah.
And not a lot of enthusiasm, but I just sort of stood up and said, good morning, my name is Mark, and I run a company called Small Business Success, and I work with people who want to start their business and small business owners who want to grow their business. Period, end, shut up and sat down. 25 people in this room that had been hearing me every month for 10 months. Nobody had ever had any interest. All of a sudden, about 6 or 7 people approached me.
Wow.
Can I get your card?
Yeah.
I want to start a business. My spouse wants to start a business. Another person said, I've been in business a little bit. I'm struggling. I could use some help. And another person said, we're really doing pretty well, but we feel as if we're a bit stuck, but we want to grow and go on to the next level. Maybe you could help us sort some things out. And Bill, within 30 days, between that meeting and another networking meeting I went to, 7 prospects wrote me a check and engaged me in the process of helping them start or grow their business.
Fascinating. And so sometimes we have to quit listening to ourselves and start talking to ourselves. And sometimes we have to quit listening to the voice that says, hey, stupid, and start listening to the voice that says, you've got some value, put it out there. So congratulations. It's been very successful. There's a great story about why this book is the size that it is. What made you make this book literally pocket size?
Well, thank you for asking, and I'll keep this very short, but my confidence, first of all, was not very high as a writer. I was beginning to find some traction as a speaker. I was beginning to find my way as a business coach or mentor. And of course, everybody said, Mark, you should write a book. And I started to ask questions, and everybody said, well, it should be 50,000 words, it should be 10 chapters, it should be hardcover, it should sell for $22.95 to $34.95. Mark, if you don't charge a lot for it, nobody's going to take it seriously. And so I wrote a 50,000 word manuscript, Bill, and I looked at it and thought, there's a lot of crap in here. And I cut 43,000 words. And prior to trimming 43,000 words, I remembered that when I graduated from high school in 1979, a priest had given my dad a copy of Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Yeah.
And that book was about 4 by 7 inches, about 100 or so pages. My dad liked that book so much that he bought a carton of them and gave one of them to his son as a high school graduation present. I wanted a car, and he and he gave me this little book called The Greatest Salesman in the World, and it changed the course of my life.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to about 1999, I thought, what if I published a book that was about 4 by 7 inches, that roughly 100 pages, and we're not even at 100 pages in that little book. It's a little book you can read in an hour and get ideas you can use for a lifetime. But I trimmed 43,000 words and was left with what you are holding in your hands. And I probably broke every publishing rule in the book in order to publish that book, but I'm just as proud of that book today as I am 20 years ago when that first book was published. And it has been a bit of an underground bestseller. I've moved over 80,000 copies of that book, and it's true. I have over 800 people like my dad who bought 50 copies or more of that book.
Well, just self-disclosure, I'm one. It may not have been 50, it may have been 25, but I know I gave a bunch of them out because small but mighty is a phrase. Good things come in small packages. We can go on and on, but the book is filled with value. Now, through the years, you've continued to grow and evolve, as you said. And so Charlie Tremendous Jones was one of your mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and I know you quote him and I may misquote him, so I apologize. I never had the chance to meet the man, but he said, you'll be the same person in 5 years that you are today, except for the people that you meet and the books that you read. That had a bit of an impact on you, did it not?
It did. I met Charlie Tremendous Jones for the first time in 1983 when I was 22.
Okay.
And he became a mentor of mine and had a profound impact on my career path as a professional speaker. And one of the great honors of my career was some 28 or 30 years later, he and I spoke together at a meeting in St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
And to have grown up sort of in his shadow, and he was a big bear of a man, to have the opportunity to share the stage with him was one of the great honors of my career.
That's fabulous. I wish I could have been there for that talk. So you have changed and you have grown and you have read books and you have met people and you have charged ahead, and goes back to one of our points earlier when I said that our purpose is a journey. So you've gone from the Growing Your Business book where you were, I'll use this phrase because I've heard you use it, you were a one-trick pony, which was come up with a defining statement. And you've since that has grown and evolved and expanded to the point that you have another book called Defining You. And I'm going to leave the subtitle to you, but please share with all of us the essence of that book.
I sure will. As I shared earlier in the interview, the monster problem is how do we articulate um, what we do and who we do it with or for, and I talk about creating a defining statement, which is a one-sentence answer to the question, what do you do? But over the course of time, we expanded that work and intellectual property into creating a defining paragraph, and we developed a 7-sentence template. And you were so kind to introduce me on this interview, opened with my defining paragraph. It's not an elevator pitch or speech. It's just a clear and succinct way to answer the critical questions that are on a prospect's mind. And then we expanded from the defining paragraph to helping people look at their defining story. And I believe that these 3 tools, defining statement, defining paragraph, and defining story, are possibly the 3 most important marketing tools in someone's marketing toolbox. And so just a couple of years ago, we published the book, Defining You, How Smart Professionals Craft the Answers to Who Are You, What Do You Do, and How Can You Help Me? And the book has, it might be the most impactful book that I have published.
Well, it's fabulous. And as far as its availability, if I'm not mistaken, it is an ebook, not available for purchase, but available through you and Growing Your Business, your company, Growing Your Business. And let me at this point, thank you for having gifted me with a copy of it. I can't wait to dig into it. So share with people how they can obtain a copy of that if they're so interested.
I sure can, and we have it in physical, a physical format as well as the electronic ebook format. So for any listeners that are more inclined to want the physical version, you can always order it on Amazon.com. And it will be a great read and one you can have in your hands and make notes, and we've got templates and tools in there. But with your permission, Bill, I would like to make it available to anyone who's listening to this interview at any time in the next year, the next 5 years. All you have to do is send me an email, mark@growingyourbusiness.com, That's Mark, M-A-R-K, at growingyourbusiness.com, and we will send you for no charge a complimentary electronic version, the ebook version of Defining You. And for any listeners that are that might be concerned, um, rest assured, you are not going to go in our database. You will not become one of my peeps, part of my herd or my tribe. All we want to do is send you the electronic version. We will not send you 17 emails in the following 14 days from your request. In fact, you'll be lucky if you ever hear from me again. Um, but we would love to make this available, and nothing would make me happier than for professionals or entrepreneurs or small business owners of any kind to get this ebook in your hands.
Well, it's a mighty generous offer, and it goes along with um, your, I'll call it tradition, or your essence of being a kind and generous person, starting with, we're going to give the Achiever Circle and you tell me what it's worth. So for those listening, if you missed that information, it'll be in the show notes. And yeah, I would urge you to get it. I've read a little bit of it already, and I'm excited. And now that I know it's a hard copy, I will get one of those as well, just because I am a lover of hard copy books.
Yeah.
So Mark, you said earlier that you are not an author, and yet you now have at least 3 books that you have authored. And the one that has had perhaps the biggest impact on me, and again, I've not read Defining You yet, but it would be hard pressed to supersede the power and the impact of a book you titled called Never Be the Same. And I'm holding that up for those of you on the YouTube channel to see. Speaking of Amazon, I did check Amazon. They have 1 copy available for $46. So, then again, they say they have used copies from $4.95. So that 1 copy must be pretty special, and it's not mine. So this book is so insightful and really is a deep dive into Mark LeBlanc, the person. And in your defining paragraph, you talked about next year you'll be doing a 500-mile walk across Spain for the 4th time. It was scheduled for this year, I believe, except the COVID situation. So this book, Never Be the Same, intersperses your life story from a business perspective and from a growing up perspective with the lessons you learned on one of these or several of these treks on the Camino de Santiago, if I pronounced that correctly. And again, people on YouTube, over Mark's shoulder is a picture of him walking the El Camino. Share with us what that is and the impact it had in your life. I know that you're a person of very strong faith, and this journey has impacted you and everyone that's come in contact with you.
Well, thank you, Bill. And across my career, I certainly have a number of achievements or things that are notable to me personally. But I've never been more proud of anything than that book, Never Be the Same. I think it's the bomb. And I think I should buy the one for $46 on Amazon, because I want to see who I autographed it to and who put it up there for sale. But it is, I mean, I had a book team working with me, and I had 4 editors helping me polish and write the story. And it also goes back to a point that I shared earlier, and that is, your story matters. And sometimes we might discount that story that got us to where we are today. And so whether it's your defining story or your story or some combination thereof, I think people come to us, Bill, for what we do. They stay with us because of who we are.
Yes.
And we are more likely to create relationships for life as people begin to know more of who we are and what we stand for. But Never Be the Same was published. It was never my goal to publish a book on the Camino. But when I came back after my first 500-mile walk in 2008, I continued to do my Achiever Circles. I continued to do my Growing Your Business presentations and coaching. But more and more people were asking me about that walk. And one day a friend of mine said, "You have got to write the story of that walk and the impact it has had on you."
Mm-hmm.
And so that book is about a third business, a third leadership, and about a third personal transformation or development. But the Camino de Santiago is a 500-mile pilgrimage across northern Spain. It's one of the three great pilgrimages of the world: Rome, Jerusalem, and Santiago. And I set out to walk it in 2008. I left for Spain about 30 days after the slide and and the completion of my term of service as president of NSA. But I needed a bit of a sabbatical during that time. I was 47 years old and embarking on the next chapter of my career. And so I took 5 weeks off. I shaved my head shiny bald. Uh, I'd always wanted to do that. And I thought this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
And I put a backpack on for the first time in my life, overpacked it, and took off for Spain. And it was the most grueling and the most profound experience of my life. And I have never been the same since the fall of 2008. And since then, not just in terms of success, but I think I've had more impact and influence in the last 12-ish years than I ever had before. I've had more fun. You might recall I like to use the example of your fun meter. My fun meter has been on max more than ever before, and there certainly has been a richness and a meaning in my world like there never has been before. So much so that I went back and walked the Camino in 2014 and 2017, and I was supposed to go this year, but it got delayed. But I will go again in 2023 and every 3 years after that until I cannot. They are all equally grueling and yet profound for different reasons.
It's amazing, and you make me at least consider doing that. I walk 4 or 5 miles a day every day, so it would take me 100 days at this point, much less 5 weeks. You know, one of the things that we've shared, and I hope I'm okay in bringing this up, is that you were going to walk the Camino this time, but not walk alone. You're going to walk with a partner. And that partner, her name is Anne. And I knew that look would come on your face as soon as I mentioned her name. So another of the parallels that we share is as we've grown and evolved and realized that there's a power greater than us out there and that we can learn and such, is unbeknownst and not as our goal, but we were able to evolve into a person where we were able to discover the right life partner for each of us. Not the same one for you have yours and I have mine, let's be clear. But that's one of the things that I love that we share. And tell me a little bit about the lovely sweet Anne. And she was ready for this, right?
Well, she was ready, and she walked a part of it in 2014. She came over and walked the last 4 days or so of the Camino and sort of caught the Camino bug and is anxious to go back and do the whole 500 miles with me. But her work commitments have not yet been able to afford her the time off to do that. But we had been hoping to do that together here this year. But my my practice marriage ended in 2004, and I was on my own for about the next 8 or 9 years. And I was very clear that I wanted to be in a committed relationship and be married again and find the right person. And boy, did I try. And but for whatever reason, for dating for the divorced was not necessarily easy for me, and I'm sure it was a picnic for you. Um, and in 2011, in late July, I went on the worst date in the history of the world, possibly the universe, um, maybe even the galaxy. And I was so discouraged, and I thought, Bill, I'm a pretty good guy. I got a lot going for me, but for whatever, I'm not perfect, but it's like, boy, there's more here to work with than meets the eye. But for whatever reason, it was not either the right time or the right person. And after this horrendous date, I thought, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. It just must not be meant. And one of the lessons of my very first Camino was given to me by a woman named Judith on the Camino. And she said, Mark, no matter how miserable you are or how badly your feet are bruised and blistered, you can always take one more step. Mm. And Bill, I hung on to that pearl of wisdom from the great Judith from London, England, for over 1 million steps across northern Spain. But fast forward to late July 2011, I'm ready to quit. And I heard Judith whisper to me, Mark, you can always hit search one more time. Mm-hmm. And I took a deep breath, I let it out, and I hit search. And up on my screen popped, I now affectionately refer to her as Sweet Anne, but up popped Sweet Anne, and my heart and my soul leapt for joy. And Bill, I knew in that moment, I don't even know if you know this story, I knew in that moment I was going to marry her. Mm. Some people know when they first meet. Yeah. I knew as clear as I saw her on the screen. Now, what do you write to the woman you're going to marry when she doesn't even know who you are?
It might start with, hi, my name is Mark.
and here I'm supposed to be the great communicator. I had nothing. I didn't even say hello. All I wrote was a question. And the question was, where have you been? And I signed my full name, which is incredibly rare for someone who does online dating. But that was it. Where have you been, Mark LeBlanc? And Anne got the email from me through Match.com, and it just intrigued her enough that she thought, where have I been? And she sent me an email, and she said, what do you mean, where have I been? In my life or in my work? And I emailed her back and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, I could have been more clear. What I really meant was, did you just get online today? Because I thought I knew every woman between 5'2" and 5'11" within 30 miles of downtown Minneapolis. And I said, you've never popped up in any of my searches. And she emailed me back. She goes, no, I've been online for a number of months. And we made arrangements to meet 5 days later. And 5 days later, we met in downtown Minneapolis, and it was she walked in, and my prediction came true. It was like game over. Now it took her a little bit longer, but not all that long.
Okay.
And 4 months later, we were engaged, and a year and a half after that, we were married here in a small little chapel just outside of downtown Minneapolis with 80 of the best people in our lives.
That's fabulous. That's absolutely fabulous. So we've talked a lot about your life, your goals, your ambition, your business, your personal life. Thank you for being so transparent and sharing all of that. And I think the best way for us to end this is you sent a message to your now wife, Sweet Anne, that said, "Where have you been?" And after our entire conversation, I'm going to ask one question of you. What's the point?
I think, gosh, there's so many different ways that I could answer that. But the answer that comes to my mind most of all, immediately, is get excited about something. I have a lot of people, Bill, who come up to me after a presentation and they will say, I'm really passionate about this, or I'm really passionate about that. And I'll say, that's great. May I ask you a question? And he or she will always say, well, certainly. And I will say, well, what are you specifically doing to advance that passion in your business or your life? And almost every time they will say, well, I'm not really doing anything to advance that because I've got a job and I've got bills to pay and I've got responsibilities and commitments to take care of. And now I don't say this anymore, but that suggests to me that you're not passionate about that you're merely interested in doing that, and you're waiting for the right time to take action. And you and I have story after story after story after story of people who had passion, but yet, even if they could not dive into the deep end of the pool to explore and create that passion and turn that into something that even on a part-time basis or for 30 minutes a day, they practiced, they researched, they studied, and they took that passion, and eventually it turned the corner and they turned it into something. And so, my question or my answer is get excited about something, and then let's look for the evidence to support that you are actively engaged in moving that passion forward, or moving that momentum ball forward in the direction of your dream.
What a fabulous answer, and thank you for that, because as you know, I talk about the purpose principle, and to me, at the core of us finding that happy quotient, at the core of us finding our fulfillment is our purpose. Not just passion alone. So when I hear people say, find your passion and you'll never have to work a day in your life, and if you only find your passion, you may never be able to work a day in your life. So yeah, we might discover our passion before we really understand where to apply that and find our purpose. And that's kind of what we alluded to way back at the start of our conversation today. And thank you again, Mark, for so much time and insight. But you found that you had a passion for speaking, but you didn't really understand at that point what your true purpose, how that was going to apply. So you stuck with it. And that's where the third part of my purpose principle comes in, and it's persistence. Persistence is taking that one more step that Judith mentioned on the Camino. And it's, taking that passion and finding the happiness with it and finding out where to apply that value. And you're an ideal example of exactly that. Mark LeBlanc, I am just blessed to have you as a friend and as a mentor and as a guest today on the What's the Point podcast. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.